Hey there, and welcome to Undoing We, Divorce and Life Conversations on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio, podcast, and TV. I'm your host, Mardi Winder Adams. I'm a divorce coach, a mediator, and someone who's been through exactly what you're going through. This show is all about helping you get through the tough stuff, the overwhelm of divorce, the what now moments, and the messiness of trying to rebuild your life. We're going to talk about real life challenges, share expert advice, and give you practical tools you can use to move forward with your life. Are you ready to start shifting from we to me? Grab a coffee, sit back, and let's get started. Have you ever found that you just feel things so much deeper than the people around you, or you react to things in a way that may be very different than others? If you do, and if you have, and if you are, you're not alone. Today, I'm going to share a clip of a recording I did with an amazing woman by the name of Sue Bruckner. She is a licensed professional counselor. She's also been a holistic relationship coach. But really what she does now is she specifically works with sensitive women who experience life in a way that is so much deeper than other people, and that is often undervalued in their personal and their professional lives. And Sue comes at this from not only the experience of dealing with an unhealthy marriage, dealing with the challenges of divorce, and then facing unexpected widowhood, but she also comes at it from a place of really understanding because she herself is a sensitive woman who dealt with many of the misperceptions around this throughout her life. Listen into our conversation and see how it resonates with you. I'm sure you're going to be able to either identify yourself or somebody you know in our conversation. What do you define as highly sensitive, and what might be some of the characteristics that people may be able to identify?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that I always want to get clear is it's not a diagnosis. You wouldn't go to a therapist and be like, oh, here's your diagnosis. Let's get you, treatment or medication or whatever it might be. It's merely and simply a biological trait. And the research shows it's 20 to 30% of the population. And they even say that 20 to 30% of animals are highly sensitive. So that always just excites me because I look at my dog and I'm like, yeah, I get you, buddy. You're more, aren't you? So the best way I like to describe being highly sensitive, well, there's a couple ways. One is it's often called a sensory processing sensitivity, which is a little bit harder to say, but it is an important distinction because what it means is that, all of your senses are on the sensitive side, right? And if you think about 5 senses, I like to include the spirituality as like a 6th sense. All of these are more finely tuned than the other part of the population. So there's a doctor who's been the kind of the spearhead of a lot of the research around being highly sensitive. And she created an acronym that I'll just go through it really quickly, but it's DOES, DOES. And the D stands for deeply feeling. So highly sensitive people have a wide spectrum of emotions, and they can be pretty intense on both sides. And it's normal. It's normal for highly sensitive. They're very deeply feeling. The O is for overstimulation, overwhelm. And if you think about it, if your 5 senses, your 6 senses are on overdrive, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be overstimulated. And this is really important in the divorce world.
Yeah.
And I'll stay with the acronym so I don't get us off track, but we'll go there, I'm sure, right? The E stands for emotional reactivity. I don't like that, so I change it, and I see a lot of other people do too, to emotional responsiveness. And so what that means is that highly sensitive people have an emotional response to almost everything. So that, they might be walking with their partner or a friend and they see something and they might be in tears or they might be really upset inside and their partner didn't notice anything, right? There's a response. The E also stands for empathy. So empathy is a beautiful thing. It can also be a curse. And what I mean by that is when highly sensitive are so into their empathy, they can excuse poor behavior because they're attaching to their empathy for the person who is treating them so poorly. It's
Yeah.
not where you want to be,
Yeah.
right? Um, the S then is for subtleties, and it all kind of ties together, right? It's like you're um, so finely attuned to everything that you notice all the subtleties. So that can be a shift in someone's mood. That can be, you walk into a room and you can tell that something's just not quite right with one of the 10 people in the room. Or, you notice that something's been moved in a room, like anything around subtleties. So it's just you're taking in the world. And what I like to say is it gets really noisy. And so for highly sensitive people, your nervous system is on overdrive until you really learn how to navigate what it means to have the D, the O, the E, and the S.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for that, because I think that for a lot of people who are going through big emotional challenges, divorce is one of them. And I know that's what we're going to talk about today. But, there are people who do respond much more significantly to even what other people may be like, oh, that was just an off the cuff comment. I work with clients that take every single one of those things to heart. And one of the things we have to work on is slowing that down and really evaluating that and trying to avoid that natural tendency to just be so empathetic and so willing to kind of give attributes to things that probably don't deserve any attributes as they're going through the divorce. So that solves a mystery right there. Thank you for that.
You're so welcome. Yeah, that's really good for your clients because that is, it's stuff that I've had to figure out on my own. How do I want to protect myself from these generalizations or these assumptions or
Right.
these,
Right.
whatever it is that my system is telling me that someone meant when maybe they just had a bad day and nothing was directed at me.
Yeah.
Right. And especially, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking, during personally in my life with when my marriage was I was married to a really, how do I want to put it? A man who was not very in touch with his emotions. He was very, I walked on eggshells. Let's just say that. And so I remember the work that I needed to do when he would come home and he would just have this energy to him, this mood to him. And instead of the first half of my marriage taking it all on, I had to learn how to say, whoa, this is, I am Sue. You are
Right.
your emotions right now. You are your anger. You are whatever it is, but I am Sue. I had to learn how to put this differentiation between us so that I could continue with my day and not be rocked by his mood.
Yeah. So, Sue, let me ask you this. And again, I may be asking the question incorrectly here. So do you see that there's any kind of attraction? We know about the attachment types, that sometimes opposites attract in that. And we know, the narcissist codependent, I really don't like those terms, but that goes on in relationships. Do you see what you just talked about, where somebody who's very empathetic and very attuned, highly sensitive, might partner with somebody or might find a partner who is more distant, cold, or very emotive? Like, do you see that those things sometimes work in what do you call it, an unhealthy alliance, sort of?
100%. Yeah. The way that I like to talk about it is that, for highly sensitives, they've grown up in a world that tells them that they're wrong. From early on, you're told, and this is coming from my own life, but also from all my clients, right? You're too sensitive. You're too emotional. Get over it. Why are you so uptight? Lighten up. Don't take everything so personally. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And you hear this from little up to, you're in school years and then in your significant relationships. So unfortunately, that often means that's what's normal. That's what feels normal, right? And so you so often pair with someone who treats you the same way that you were treated growing up. It's just what we do. There's a lot of psychology behind it that we don't need to get into today, but absolutely, you end up partnering with people who mimic what you've been hearing all along.
Yeah.
So those are people who often are not very healthy emotionally themselves, right? They are people who will take all the empathy, and I'm generalizing from my personal experience and that of my clients, right? We often partner with people who will take all of that empathy and then want more, like the what they call energy vampires, right? Because you're so willing to step into their shoes. You're so willing to say, okay, wait, this is me. I can change. And you allow a lot of poor behaviors, a lot of mistreatment.
Yeah. And again, I think this is such a unique way of looking at this. And I love that you're not indicating it's a deficit, it's a syndrome, it's a bad thing at all. It's a positive part of being a person, a unique individual. And you can learn to protect yourself and create healthy relationships. That's what I'm always so excited when a guest says, "Hey, this is not how you have to stay. There are some things that you can do." Because I'm guessing that yes, this would be hard to deal with in a divorce, but I'm guessing in a collegial relationship with an employer, in an employee-employer relationship, in all of those kind of things. I mean, this could potentially be a challenge for a lot of highly sensitive people, especially if you were in a position where you had to, say, fire somebody or do performance reviews. I can just imagine that would be really gut-wrenching for somebody who's highly sensitive to do that kind of work.
Absolutely. And in fact, a few years ago, I have a curriculum that I've developed called Up Level, and I was running it really geared towards women going through relationships. They just wanted help, support, and guidance, and they wanted to grow and how they navigated relationships. And in my mind, that meant romantic relationships. And I think even in some of my marketing, but one of the very first people who came to me was like, my partnership with my husband is fantastic. It's at work. I struggle at work because I'm so sensitive and I'm in this managerial position. And I've got these people who, don't like me because I'm higher up, and it was so hard for her to navigate.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. And I actually think about her often because when I followed up with her after the program, she said, that the main shift was that she was kinder to herself after learning how to really navigate being a highly sensitive woman, and with the protection, with the boundaries, with the self-compassion, really. And then also just with that trust that your life can be so lovely, right? That it creates this just container for making the positive shifts that you want to and not being held back by all the noise.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said a word that my ears always perk up when people say it, because I think it's used all the time and people don't clearly understand it. Can you talk a little bit about boundaries and why boundaries might be something that women who are highly sensitive going through a divorce, or men who are highly sensitive, you just happen to work with women, when they're going through divorce, why those boundaries would be important, and how can you get started if you're somebody who says, yep, I need to start creating some boundaries in my life?
Yeah, that's a super good question. I keep saying that because your questions are very good. Where do I want to go with this? First, what I want to say is when I work with boundaries with people, we often think that it's how we put up this like rigid wall between us and somebody else. And one of the things that's really important is to understand that boundaries you can think of them like standards. What type of standards do you want to have for what type of treatment you receive, right? So what is okay and what's not okay? That's really what a boundary is. I find that most of the time, boundaries need to be flexible. And I'm just saying most of the time, because for sure when there's abuse, when there's aggression, this pile of negative stuff, boundaries need to be very firm. But a lot of times and especially as highly sensitive, because we can tap into the nuances, those subtleties, you learn that the boundaries take their own shape, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
One of the things that I also talk with my clients about is that it is so important. I mean, yes, those boundaries are really important, but it's the self boundaries that we really need to get clear on. What are we going to allow to happen? How are we going to allow ourselves to talk to ourselves? How are we going to, navigate our time? Because for highly sensitives, energy is a really big thing, because the world is so noisy that we so often get tired. And so energy boundaries, like how much can you do in a day? How much are you going to allow in? That's not really a boundary you're putting up with somebody else. That's a boundary you're saying, oh, this is something that I need to realize I need to do for myself. For example, I've had to put a big self boundary on looking at the news right now, because as a highly sensitive person, if I do that, and I know it's all of us really, but if I do that first thing in the morning, I'm drained. It has taken so much out of me just to process all the feelings that come up when I'm reading the news, that you and I wouldn't be having a good conversation right now.
Right.
And so I've had that's a self boundary, right? I have that within myself. Like, I know what I need to do to best care for myself. Because one of the things I like to say is that we're always just one choice away from loving ourselves better. And that is often putting in a boundary with ourselves or with somebody else.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's a really great thing, because that self-love is another thing I think that's really hard for a lot of women, and I'm sure for men as well. But I think especially for women who maybe feel like you say, that they haven't, maybe they're not understood, that they are misrepresented when people speak to them, that they're not, like you said, I'm thinking of some people that I know that other people have said to me, oh, how do you work with that person? Because they are like, if you just look at them wrong, they're upset, or they're crying, or they're stomping off. Sometimes it's not just crying. Sometimes it's getting mad and leaving. How do you start that self-compassion or that self-love?
This is going to sound silly, but this is what it took for me to really go there, was this realization that, I was like, who am I with the most in my life? And, that's me. I'm with myself 24/7. I was like, why would I not want to be nice to myself? Why would I not want to care and nurture for the person that I'm with all the right?
Yeah.
And so that was the door opening to, oh, I want to learn how to be nice. Because my 20s were very tumultuous. My teens were very, a lot of depression. 20s was just, I was learning all of this. My grad school teacher told me I didn't need to navel gaze so much, but that's who I am. I go deep in trying to figure out how I want to navigate the world. And during my 20s, I was like, I don't want to be the person that's shitting on myself anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, and I actually want to feel good. And so that was, okay, how do I do this? And part of that was just being aware. Part of that for me was just journaling everything down, trying to get everything out, not holding on to it. Part of that was seeing a therapist. Part was also brought to me when I joined a program Brene Brown did quite a while ago, like 10 years ago. And she partnered with Dr. Kristen Neff, who's a self-compassion researcher. Mm-hmm. And the way the two of them worked opened up a whole new world for me of it was all things that I was percolating on and things that were coming to me, but they just put it so succinctly of, self-compassion is, well, one, of course, it's being kind to yourself. I mean, that makes sense, but we don't know how to do that.
Right.
We're not taught that. The other piece that I love that they talk about is that it's this universal part about being human, right? And I was really kind of like linking into that in my 20s, like, I'm human, I'm suffering. that person's human, they're suffering. This is the common thing. We suffer. It doesn't mean that we're bad. It just means that we're human,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then also just really getting mindful of the mind body connection. It was my therapist in my 20s really helped me with that. So I started to learn when something didn't feel good and physically, that meant that there was something I was thinking or believing or experiencing that I needed to nurture and massage and make feel better. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the mindfulness piece of self-compassion.
I told you it would be interesting. I think Sue just has this amazing way of describing this. And now I realize that a lot of my clients who are reacting to divorce in a way that perhaps their attorneys can't understand, or their financial people, or even their friends and family can't understand, are really fitting into that highly sensitive category. So a few things I want to highlight. Number one, highly sensitive people experience the world more deeply than other people. And this is not a diagnosis, but it's just a way of being. It's a trait. It's who you are. And interestingly enough, Sue points out that highly sensitive category is about 20 to 30% of the population. And it may even include our pets. I have to tell you, I have a drama dog. I'm pretty sure he's fitting into this category. So they may have heightened emotions. They may have heightened sensory input or stimulus from sensory input. And they may even find little things in their environment are more stimulating or more irritating or more overwhelming than other people. I think this is really important to remember, because not only maybe are you fitting into this category or somebody you know, but hey, our kids could be here as well, right? So the other thing that Sue brings up so clearly is that, number one, as a highly sensitive person, you have to find a way to build self-compassion into your life. And that means really respecting who you are and recognizing that this is not a bad thing. This is not a negative thing. This is who you are in your wonderful amazingness. And so we have to just learn to adjust. I would not classify myself as a highly sensitive person, but I now, after hearing this and talking to Sue, I do feel that I have a greater capacity to try to understand why some people may be having these extreme reactions to situations, or what I feel is an extreme reaction to these situations, when in fact for them it is absolutely just the way that they interact and handle the world around them. And tied in with that is the idea that boundaries are going to be really critical for these people, because it only makes sense if you are experiencing everything so much more. Turn it up to 11 if you're old enough to know where that came from. You are going to have to be really careful and protect yourself from being overwhelmed and overloaded in the relationship, in your world, in your experiences, and even in your environment. And that's something I think there's so much stimulation today in the world around us. These little devices always pinging and beeping and zipping and zapping and ringing. We really do have to be careful and monitor ourselves and take care of ourselves. The third thing I think that Sue really points out nicely is that even as a child, they're told that they're too much, that they may find that they're choosing the wrong relationships over and over again. So they may find themselves in relationships with people who are very cold and distant and avoidant. And breaking these patterns in relationships may be the pathway to healing. So learning how to set boundaries, learning how to ask for what you need, learning to find that way to care for yourself and give yourself compassion is only going to help build your self-love. And once we feel good and safe and secure about ourselves, then we don't fall back into those old and unhealthy relationship patterns that may be costing us a considerable amount in our life, in our energy, in our experience of the world. So thanks for listening in. I hope you found this helpful. And if you're working, or or you love, or you're in a relationship, or you're a friend or family member of a highly sensitive person, read a little bit more, get to learn a little bit more, and do what you can to understand the world from their perspective. Thanks for sharing your time with me on Undoing We. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to share it with a friend and don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you're looking for some more support, be sure to grab my guide, 5 Strategies for Better Communication During Divorce and Other Life Transitions. The link is going to be in the show notes. And remember, no matter what you do today, do something special for yourself because you deserve it.